Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the RSIS webinar entitled Indonesian Foreign Policy under President Prabowo, ASEAN and Beyond. I'm Dr. Alexander Arifianto, Senior Fellow and Coordinator of Indonesia Program at Rajaratnam School of International Studies, Nanyang Technological University. I'll be the moderator for this webinar. Today, we are very honored to have Ibu Marina Sari, coordinator and researcher of the ASEAN Studies Program of the Habibie Center in Jakarta, Indonesia. She will be our presenter for this interesting webinar. The webinar examines the foreign policy direction of Indonesia under President Prabowo Subianto and the key challenges that lie ahead. In concluding his diplomacy, President Prabowo has pursued an omnidirectional foreign policy approach characterized by intensive engagement with all major powers on the global stage. In the economic domain, Indonesia has simultaneously pursued membership of both the OECD and BRICS, not to mention also joining other new multilateral institutions such as the US-led Board of Peace. This reflects Indonesia's desire to engage with both established and emerging multilateral institutions. On the defense sector, Indonesia has prioritized the modernization of its military force through the diversification of strategic partnership with a wide range of countries. Lastly, this webinar will also assess the state and trajectory of Indonesia's engagement with ASEAN under President Prabowo. So for the next 40 minutes or so, Ibu Marina will give her presentation. After her presentation is concluded, we will open with Q&A. Please ask your questions in the Q&A box, which we will get to them later as Ibu Marina's talk concluded. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Ibu Marina to start her presentation at this time. Bu Marina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pa Alex. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank to RSIS for inviting me to this webinar. It's an honor to be here. Thank you also to Dr. Alex for the kind introduction. As mentioned, today I'll be discussing Indonesian foreign policy under President Prabowo, ASEAN and beyond. And before I begin, please allow me to clarify that the views I present today are my personal opinions and do not represent the official position of my institution. Could the committee share my PPT, please? Right, next, please. So before we dive into the main topic, let me briefly introduce the Habibie Center for those who may not be familiar with my institution. So the Habibie Center is an independent think tank. It was established by the third Indonesian president, B.J. Habibie, in 1999, focusing on democracy and human rights. At the Habibie Center, we work on several thematic programs. First is ASEAN Studies, which is the program I'm part of. In this program, we discuss international affairs from political security, economy, and socio-cultural perspective, including regional dynamics in ASEAN. Second is Peace and Development, which focuses on issues related to terrorism and counter-violent extremism. Third is Politics and Governance, which looks at Indonesia's domestic political developments. And under this program, we also have annual flagship event called the Habibie Democracy Forum. In the health program, we conduct research on issues such as stunting, and currently we are working on research related to leprosy. Lastly, and more recently, over the past 2 years, the Habibie Center has expanded its work into just energy transition and climate action. We publish a book titled Climate Action 101. So this is a beginner-friendly guide on climate change issues for young generation. So we welcome any collaboration with various partners which share the same commitment to contributing positively in these fields. Next, please. And now, here is my outline. So first, I'll talk about the essence of Indonesia's free and active foreign policy and how Prabowo articulates it through his good neighbor policy. Then I'll highlight Prabowo's idiosyncratic leadership factors, which I believe significantly influence Indonesia's foreign policy decision-making process. Then we'll explore his omnidirectional approach through the lenses of diplomacy, defense, and economics. After that, we'll look at Indonesia's position and attitudes within ASEAN amidst the US-China rivalry and on the issue of Palestine, especially through the Board of Peace. And it is also important to compare the foreign policy approaches of President Prabowo with his two predecessors, President Joko Widodo and also President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. And finally, I'll offer some conclusions and recommendations. Next, please. First and foremost, let's revisit the foundation Indonesia's free and active foreign policy. The core principle were first articulated by Muhammad Hatta, Indonesia's first vice president in 1948 in Yogyakarta. At the height of the Cold War between the US and the Soviet Union, Muhammad Hatta asserted that Indonesia should not be an object in international conflicts. Instead, we must remain a subject with the right to determine our own destiny. This was famously called rowing between two reefs. And our foreign policy is defined by two keywords, free and active. Free means that Indonesia as a sovereign nation is free to determine its position and views on international issues and to respond based on its national interests without aligning with any major power. Active means that Indonesia doesn't remain passive in global affairs. Instead, it actively contributes to addressing international challenges in pursuit of national interests, regional and global peace, and also stability. So in other words, Indonesia's free and active foreign policy is not a neutral policy, but rather one that positions Indonesia as non-aligned country that doesn't bind itself to any military bloc or alliance. Next, please. Every president has their own style in articulating this free and active foreign policy. And for President Prabowo, he emphasizes a good neighbor policy when he mentioned that given Indonesia's strategic geographic location, it's vital for us to be a good neighbor to other countries. Prabowo often uses the phrase 1,000 friends are too few, one enemy is too many. This reflects his strategic vision to build strong ties and minimize conflict with all nations. He also aims to strengthen Indonesia's role as a bridge between major powers. This translates into an openness to cooperate with any party as long as it aligns with our national interests. On the global stage, he is committed to actively promoting dialogue, peace, and compromise through international cooperation. Next, please. When we analyze how foreign policy is made, we know that both internal and external factors come into play. As you can see from this table, internally we consider things like political structure, military and economic capabilities, idiosyncratic leadership, interest groups, and domestic public opinion. Externally, it's shaped by the international power structure, actions of other states, international law, international organizations, and also global public opinion. But for our discussion today, I want to focus on the idiosyncratic leadership factor because in President Prabowo's case, his personal background and style have a very significant influence on Indonesia's foreign policy. Next, please. So let's unpack President Prabowo's idiosyncratic factors. As we know, President Prabowo has a strong military background. He was a former general in the Indonesian army and served as the Minister of Defense from 2019 to 2024. So this background makes him prioritize Indonesia's national interests related to defense, such as sovereignty, national security, and territorial integrity. Second, he is also a businessman, and his father was a prominent economist who played a key role in shaping economic policy during the New Order era. This influences Prabowo to focus on the economic sector as well, especially related to investment and trade. Importantly, President Prabowo spent part of his childhood living abroad, which exposed him to different cultures and international environments. So these experiences has shaped his worldview and perspective on global dynamics. From these life experiences, we can see that the priorities of his foreign policy naturally gravitate towards the defense sector, the economy, and strong desire for Indonesia to play an active role in world affairs. Next. Now let's look at President Prabowo's leadership style. First, it is much a leader-centric foreign policy. President Prabowo's personal approach, for example, directly leading communication with other world leaders, shows a highly centralized foreign policy management style that relies heavily on president's personal role. We can identify this as personalized diplomacy, where diplomatic decisions are centered on the figure of the president. Second, I would argue that President Prabowo adopts an omnidirectional approach, meaning that Indonesia seeks to engage with all directions and with all partners. This reflected in high intensity of his diplomatic engagement worldwide, which he believes is necessary to strengthen Indonesia's global position. I'll explain how this omnidirectional approach is implemented in the fields of diplomacy, defense, and economics in the following slides. Next, please. In terms of diplomacy, President Prabowo has engaged in what can be called globe-trotting diplomacy. Within his first year in office, he conducted more than 30 state visits across Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and the Americas to participate in bilateral meetings and also international summits. Most of these visits have focused on discussion related to trade, investment, and defense cooperation. If we average this out, it means that President Prabowo has made almost 3 international trips per month. The intensity of these engagements is one of the most visible indicators that we can see his new diplomatic approach. If we compare with his previous predecessors, this number surpasses the international visit by President Joko Widodo and President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. For example, President Joko Widodo made 16 overseas visits in his first year in 2014, while President SBY made just around 10 visits in his first year. And according to President Prabowo, the purpose of his globe-trotting diplomacy is to engage directly with leaders of partner countries to build confidence in Indonesia. At the same time, it also reflects his ambition to reassert Indonesia's presence on the global political stage. Next, please. We can also observe how President Prabowo communicates on international issues. In several cases, the statement of President Prabowo have sparked public debate and criticism. Let me briefly highlight 3 examples here. The first one is regarding the joint statement between China and Indonesia on advancing comprehensive strategic partnership, which was issued last year in November. In point 9, the statement refers to cooperation in areas of overlapping claims. So the phrase has led to controversy because it appears to imply that Indonesia recognizes China's claim related to the 9-dash line in the South China Sea. In response to that, the Indonesian Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a clarification. The ministry emphasized that Indonesia does not recognize China's claim because they are inconsistent with the international law and UNCLOS. It also stressed that any potential cooperation would not affect Indonesia's sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdictions in the North Natuna Sea. The second example relates to President Prabowo's proposal to evacuate around 1,000 residents of Gaza to Indonesia. And many observers argue that the proposal doesn't address the root cause of the problem. Why? Because from this perspective, the issue is not the presence of people in Gaza, but rather the ongoing violence affecting Palestinians. They were also concerned about whether those evacuated would be guaranteed the opportunity to return to Palestine. So as a result, many critics viewed evacuating Palestinians to other countries as an ineffective solution. The third and most recent example concerns about Indonesia's offer to act as a mediator of U.S. Israel and Iran conflict. And in this case, many are skeptical as well because this proposal, the proposal should be uh, agreed by the parties involved. So this raises a key question: who has actually requested Indonesia to take on this role? And after the statement, the Iranian ambassador to Indonesia has already indicated that Iran is unwilling to negotiate. At the same time, President Trump has stated that the US would not sign any agreement with Iran. Therefore, while the intention may be positive, but goodwill alone is not enough to mediate a complex international conflict like this. So the effort requires a very careful approach and strong diplomatic strategy. Next, please. Now we move on to the defense sector. The most prominent topic under President Prabowo is defense modernization. Looking back at his time as Indonesia's Minister of Defense, Prabowo has consistently emphasized defense industry cooperation during his state visits to modernize Indonesia's military equipment. This priority continues now that he is president. From this table, we can see a clear diversification of defense industry partners beyond our traditional one, the US. So I put 4 examples here. First, in July 2025, Indonesia signed a contract with Turkey to purchase 48 KAAN fighter jets with deliveries scheduled in stages over the next 10 years. Second, Indonesia received a grant for an 18M class patrol vessel from Japan under its official security assistance mechanism, and this cooperation has been approved by the Indonesian parliament. The third one is Indonesia is planning to buy 42 Chengdu J-10 fighter jets from China. So I would argue that this would be a significant strategic move in Indonesia-China defense cooperation. While a contract hasn't been signed yet, but the budget has been approved by the Indonesian finance minister, and there have been signals from the Minister of Defense that the fighter jet will soon be flying in Jakarta. The most recent development is cooperation with Italy. Indonesia will receive the aircraft carrier Giuseppe Garibaldi as a grant through a government-to-government scheme, and it's planned to arrive in Indonesia during our military's anniversary in October this year. And if it happens, it will become Indonesia's first aircraft carrier. Along with the carrier, Indonesia will also purchase M346 trainer jets from Italy. The Minister of Defense already signed a letter of intent last month, but it's not a final procurement contract. From those examples, on the one hand, these developments reflects Indonesia's effort to diversify its defense partnership, to reduce dependence on a single supplier and minimize the risk of arm embargoes. On the other hand, there are also challenges to consider, especially when acquiring second-hand defense equipment, which often involves high overhaul and maintenance costs. Additionally, military personnel must receive proper training to ensure operational capability and interoperability across different systems. Next, please. There's one standout defense cooperation agreement signed just this past February, which is the Australia-Indonesia Treaty on Common Security. I think it's important to put this new treaty here because it's more than just diplomatic highlight. It signals the start of new strategic chapter between Indonesia and Australia and the maturation of their bilateral relationship that has often had its ups and downs in the past. So this new treaty builds upon and consolidates existing security defense cooperation, such as the 2006 Lombok Treaty and the 2024 Defense Cooperation Agreement. What's the new is there are three key elements to the treaty. The first one is it establishes a mechanism for a regular consultation at the leader and minister level. Second, it institutionalizes an individual or joint response to shared security challenges where appropriate. And then the third one is it aims to expand their mutually beneficial defense activities. The treaty is driven by strategic necessity because both countries share concerns about an increasingly complex geopolitical landscape. However, it's important to note that this treaty is not a mutual defense treaty or a military alliance. It's best understood as a framework for regular high-level dialogue. It also encourages leaders from both countries to engage in good faith communication and confidence building measures, which ultimately to prevent diplomatic surprises. Next, please. In the economic sector, Indonesia is currently pursuing a dual-track strategy through its simultaneous engagement with OECD accession and BRICS membership. I'm not an expert in the international political economy, but I had some discussions with academics and government officials in my center about this issue, so I'll try to put some key takeaways here. Let's first discuss the OECD. So President Prabowo continued the policy of his predecessor when Indonesia sent a letter of interest in July 2023 under President Jokowi. And for technical review stage, preparing an initial memorandum, which is essentially a self-assessment evaluating the alignment of Indonesia's regulations, policies, and practices with OECD standards. And the government also hopes to complete the accession process by 2027. Joining the OECD could help accelerate Indonesia's economic transformation, improve governance standards, and promote inclusive growth, while also increasing investor confidence and improving access to international markets. Indonesia's story with BRICS is quite different. Unlike the lengthy OECD accession process, Indonesia's entry into BRICS was rapid and immediate. This was a significant step for Indonesia as we became the first Southeast Asian nation to join BRICS on January 6, 2025. Unlike the OECD, BRICS focuses on issues that the OECD might not fully address, such as health, pharmaceutical standardization, technology transfer and research, and also diseases. For Indonesia, BRICS also provides access to alternative development financing through the New Development Bank or NDB, although its financing capacity remains relatively limited compared to traditional multilateral institutions. More broadly, BRICS can also serve as a platform for South-South cooperation and amplify the voice of global South countries in global governance. Indonesia as a middle power can utilize this opportunity because we don't just only follow the global trend, but also we can shape the agenda setting. So therefore, Indonesia's engagement with both OECD and BRICS reflects a form of strategic pragmatism in response to shifting global geoeconomics dynamics. Next, please. Now let's turn our attention to ASEAN region. A president's first overseas trips often signal their international policy direction and priorities. Traditionally, Indonesian presidents have followed the custom of making their first official visits to ASEAN countries. For example, as you can see in the picture, President Abdurrahman Wahid, Megawati, Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono in his second term, and Joko Widodo all made their first visit to neighboring countries within ASEAN. However, President Prabowo's first official visit were not to ASEAN countries. Instead, he went to China, the US, Peru, Brazil, the UK, and also the United Arab Emirates. This list is a significant departure from his predecessors, who always included at least one ASEAN nation in their initial foreign trips. The choice of China and the US as his first two destinations is seen as highly symbolic, signaling President Prabowo's intention to balance Indonesia's position amidst the major power rivalry. Next, please. Indonesia's priorities within ASEAN have also come into question, as some observers feel the country has been relatively passive in responding to regional dynamics. We can see from two cases here. First one is the absence of Foreign Minister Sugiono at an informal meeting in Thailand discussing the Myanmar issue, where Indonesia was represented only at the senior official level. Such absences can send unintended signals suggesting that ASEAN issues may not be receiving sufficient priority. Another example is Indonesia's relatively quiet role in the Thailand-Cambodia conflict. However, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has pushed back on this criticism, stating that the government has been engaging in quiet diplomacy behind the scenes, even if these efforts aren't publicly visible. My own take, perhaps Indonesia is being carefully not to step on Malaysia as last year's ASEAN chair, choosing instead of to offer behind-the-scenes support. This stands in contrast to 2011 when Foreign Ministry Marina actively conducted shuttle diplomacy to ease the Thai-Cambodia border dispute. I would suggest as one of ASEAN's founding fathers and the natural leader in the region, ASEAN should remain a key priority in Indonesia's strategic environment. Next, please. Now, when looking at how Indonesia navigates its relations with the two major powers, the US and China, we can start by examining President Prabowo's first overseas visit, as I mentioned before. After taking office, he visited China first and then the US. This sequence suggests that Indonesia is trying to maintain a balanced relationship with both powers. As we know, the US has traditionally been Indonesia's main defense partner, while China has become Indonesia's key economic partner. Interestingly, cooperation with China has also begun to expand into the defense sector, something that was rarely seen in the past. Let me begin by discussing Indonesia-China relations under the Prabowo administration. China was the first country visited by Prabowo both after he was elected president and after his inauguration. And during his visit to Beijing, President Prabowo emphasized that the relationship between Indonesia and China is highly strategic and important. And during his meeting with President Xi Jinping, he reaffirmed Indonesia's commitment to continuing the foreign policy and development agenda of former President Joko Widodo. He also stated that Indonesia's achievements of previous administration would serve as the foundation for strengthening Indonesia's comprehensive strategic partnership with China. We can also see from the attendance of Prabowo in China's military parade in September last year, even as large-scale demonstrations were taking place domestically. What was particularly notable was that he stood in the front row alongside leaders such as Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, and Kim Jong-un. Being placed in such a prominent position can be interpreted as a signal from China that it considers Indonesia an important partner. In the defense sector, Indonesia and China had previously been relatively limited. However, recently Indonesia has expressed interest in expanding military cooperation with China. For example, both countries held the Helping Garuda 2024 joint exercise in Jakarta in December in 2024. This exercise focused on joint natural disaster rescue operations. And in addition, as I mentioned earlier, Indonesia has also begun to show interest in purchasing defense equipment from China. But even though Indonesia-China defense ties appear to be deepening, I think the US remains Indonesia's primary partner in defense cooperation. Now let's turn to the US side. In the defense sector, Indonesia-US relations under President Prabowo have remained relatively stable. Defense cooperation continues much as it has in previous years. One example is the annual Super Garuda Shield joint military exercise. However, the issue I would like to highlight here is the economic dimension, especially after President Trump announced a new tariff policy in April 2025. In response, the Indonesian government began conducting a series of tariff negotiations with the US, and this process eventually led to the signing of the Agreement on Reciprocal Trade, or ART, between Indonesia and the US on 19 February 2026. Under this agreement, an average import tariff of 19% was set for Indonesia products entering US market. However, just one day later, the US Supreme Court overturned President Trump's global reciprocal tariff policy. This raises an important question: what will happen to the Indonesia-US tariff agreement after this court decision? So at this point, we still need to observe further developments because President Trump has attempted to reinstate global tariffs of around 10 to 15% using different legal bases. But these efforts have also faced strong domestic opposition, including 24 lawsuits filed by state governments. As a result, the implementation of these tariffs remain uncertain. Moreover, the ART agreement itself can only take effect 90 days after it is ratified by both the Indonesian and the US parliaments. Another recent development is Indonesia's decision to join the Board of Peace, an initiative proposed by President Trump. I'll discuss it in more detail in the next slide. Next, please. So Indonesia officially joined the Board of Peace on January 22nd, 2026. And according to the government, this reflects Indonesia's active commitment to finding long-term solutions to for peace in Palestine. And the second point is Indonesia has been appointed deputy commander of forces in the Gaza Stabilization Mission as part of the ISF, the International Stabilization Force. It operates as a temporary military force outside direct UN command, but under joint command approved by the Board of Peace, with troops contributed by member countries. Indonesia has expressed readiness to deploy 8,000 military personnel to join the ISF. The Indonesian government also stated that Indonesia will withdraw if the Board of Peace shows no concrete progress toward a two-state solution, or if its action ultimately harm the Palestinian cause. Next, please. Indonesia's decision to join the Board of Peace has sparked both support and criticism at home. Supporters argue that joining the Board of Peace demonstrates Indonesia's genuine commitment to world peace, especially regarding Palestine. They believe Indonesia should not just be a bystander. So by becoming a Board of Peace member, Indonesia can potentially influence the peace process from within and serve as a bridge for Palestinian voices and interests, because Palestine is not a member. Critics, however, see the Board of Peace as more of an exclusive US project than an inclusive multilateral peace initiative. Their concerns are threefold. First, Palestine lacks representation within the Board of Peace structure. Peace can hardly be achieved without involving the conflicting parties directly at the negotiating table. This arrangement potentially limits Palestinians' right to determine their own future. Second, there is the lifetime leadership structure with Trump at the helm, plus an executive board dominated by his inner circle. This looks less like US state policy and more like a personal Trump project. The third one is, and this is also important, member countries face a 3-year term limits unless they contribute $1 billion to fund council activities, which secures permanent membership according to the charter. But Foreign Minister Sugiono has clarified that this $1 billion contribution isn't mandatory and Indonesia hasn't paid it, rather than contributing troops for this ISF. So given these competing perspectives, the Indonesian government needs to continuously evaluate whether its membership aligns with our national principles and interests. At the end of the day, people will judge not just intention, but actual results. Next, please. Let me offer a comparison of foreign policy priorities and styles under President Prabowo and his two predecessors, President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono and President Joko Widodo. During the President SBY, we saw a slogan quite similar to Prabowo's, "Thousand friend and zero enemy," emphasizing broad friendship with other nations. SBY's foreign policy was outward-looking, focusing on soft power diplomacy through initiatives like the Bali Democracy Forum. Indonesia played an active role in international forums to enhance its positive image and influence both within ASEAN and globally. Then came President Joko Widodo's first term, where he launched the Global Maritime Fulcrum Vision, an ambitious plan to transform Indonesia into an advanced and strong maritime nation. But interestingly, this vision faded during his second term as President Joko Widodo shifted focus more toward domestic infrastructure development. The Jokowi era saw Indonesia's foreign policy take a more inward-looking turn, prioritizing national economic interests and infrastructure's development. So through his down-to-earth approach, it focused on pragmatic diplomacy, delivering tangible benefits for Indonesia, especially regarding the economic interest, like infrastructure projects, and also protection for Indonesian citizens overseas. Jokowi also gave the Ministry of Foreign Affairs significant room to translate his vision into concrete diplomatic action. So here is the contrast. Where Jokowi was very inward-looking with his focus on international development, Prabowo is decidedly outward-looking, determined to ensure Indonesia's position is clearly visible on the world stage. This shows in his globe-trotting diplomacy and omnidirectional approach. Next, please. To conclude, we are seeing strong presidential dominance over Indonesia's foreign policy under President Prabowo. The choice of a non-career diplomat as foreign minister signals that the president himself is directly steering foreign policy decisions and frequently engaging personally in diplomatic activities. 1 year in, President Prabowo has demonstrated that Indonesia is moving quickly in all directions through his omnidirectional approach, but here is an important point. The free and active foreign policy doesn't mean we must join every forum or organizations out there. Rather, we need to carefully choose which diplomatic spaces align with Indonesian principle and national interest. While Indonesia's global engagement has increased significantly, its role within ASEAN appears less visible, which raises important questions about the balance between global ambition and regional leadership. This first year marks a consolidation phase, but Indonesia's foreign policy direction still lacks clear definition from my point of view. Next, please. I'd like to offer several recommendations for the Indonesian government to consider. First, always calculate strategic national interests in every foreign policy decision. This sounds basic, but it requires consistent and disciplined application. Second, foreign policy should not be a one-man show. It needs strong coordination between the President and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs because it's essential as the ministry remains a primary executor of Indonesia's diplomacy. Third, decision must be based on comprehensive consideration with rational and realistic approaches. When official decisions or statements aren't backed by thorough analysis, they often create domestic and international confusion. For example, as I mentioned before, sometimes the Ministry of Foreign Affairs ends up having to step in and clean up to clarify policies to prevent misperception internationally. And finally, ASEAN must remain the anchor of Indonesian foreign policy. We simply cannot abandon our role in ASEAN. With our standing as de facto leader in the region, Indonesia should leverage this position to strengthen its global influence. Next, please. So to end my presentation, I'd like to share a few quotes. Indonesia's diplomatic approach must emphasize statecraft, not stagecraft. And in diplomacy, being present is already half winning, But what matters more is meaningful presence, not merely symbolic presence. Good neighbor policy means maintaining friendly diplomatic relations with all nations, but let's not forget that ASEAN is our close neighbor. Next, please. Yeah, this is my last slide. I'll stop here. Thank you very much for listening. I'm looking forward to a fruitful discussion. Over to you, Dr. Alex.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibu Marina, for this very interesting, very comprehensive overview of Indonesian foreign policy under President Prabowo. And thank you for being so very detailed and thorough in detailing the president's main accomplishments in foreign policy over the past year and a half of his presidency. So I noticed that there are a couple of questions already from the audience. So before I proceed in asking the questions to Ibu Marina, let me just repeat that if you have any questions for the speaker, please type in your questions in the Q&A button on this Zoom, and uh, please also mention your name and your institutional affiliation at the end of your questions. So without further ado, I notice we already have two questions already. The first question comes from my counterpart from the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, Yusof Ishak Institute, Ibu Julia Lau. So the question for Bu Marina is the following. Thank you for your presentation. Beyond the details, if you could step back and assess the overall foreign policy apparatus in Indonesia after almost 1.5 years of the Prabowo presidency, who actually called the shot? Does the president lead on foreign policy? Are Kemlu and its corps of career diplomats frozen out of the process or not being heard? And how has the foreign minister conducted his role? Do you get a sense that there is a coherence, or are we to interpret your points of quote unquote idiosyncrasy to indicate an ad hoc process or one that changes from issue to issue? So, okay, Bu Marina, can you answer Ibu Julia's question, please?
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Julia, for your question. For my perspective, as I mentioned in my presentation, so under President Prabowo, the decision is centered to him, and he also has his own speechwriter beyond the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That's why sometimes it lacks of coordination between the MOFA, the president, when the president make some statements in international forum, because he has his own circle. But if I recall, the vice minister, the deputy minister of foreign affairs, Pak Hafaz, said that the script of Prabowo's speech also are consulted to the MOFA. But again, I don't see it happens, especially when I mentioned earlier about some cases after President Prabowo made statement in public, then later the Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued clarifications. So at this point, I believe that all decision mostly depends on the Prabowo's mind.
Okay. Yeah, is that all? Your answer, Mbak?
Yes, Pak.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bu Marina. Let me just scroll over. We already have quite a bit of questions right now. Let's see. Uh, okay. Let me just proceed to the next question. This is from our RSIS colleague, Adlini. Questions very short. What is the role of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or KEMLU, in this leader-centric foreign policy regime?
I think it's also related to my answer before. Maybe just to add that we know our current Minister of Foreign Affairs is not from diplomat career. That's why Prabowo uh, decided to choose three deputy ministers of foreign affairs to handle or to address Middle East issue, international law, and I forgot another one. So I see the role of Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Foreign Affairs is not as big than before because under Jokowi, he gave his uh, mandate more to our foreign minister back then, Ibu Retno Marsudi, to translate his vision. But under Prabowo, as I mentioned before, the decision is centered to him. But maybe I would say the MOFA will just for bureaucracy process. Yeah, thank you, Pak.
Okay. Just a quick follow-up from me on this same question, if you
Yes,
don't mind.
sure.
Can you please explain to us what is the logic of appointing three different deputy foreign minister or women, like, and then
Uh-huh.
how come there are two different women from the career diplomatic corps. One is Hafaz, and the other one is Armantia. Like, how come you don't just appoint one career diplomat, for instance? Maybe you can elaborate to us, Ibu.
Yeah, maybe I think they are chosen because they have to support Foreign Minister Sugiono because he's not from Kemlu. That's why Prabowo separated these three sections of Wamenlu because, as we know, that Pak Hafaz is an expert and a diplomat focusing on international law, and another one, I forgot his name. I believe he's in charge for Middle East area.
Okay, I think that's
Uh,
yeah, the Anis Mata.
yeah, true. Yeah, Panis Mata. And Pak Armanata Nasir for Asia, or I also don't remember exactly. So it will provide a specific task for them to support and to give insight for our foreign minister, I guess.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bu Marina. So, okay, let me just okay. Next question is from another RSIS colleague, Bapak Faisal. His question is related to the aircraft carrier Giuseppe Garibaldi. Once the aircraft carrier Garibaldi arrive, how would it affect the defense relation dynamic between Indonesia and other ASEAN countries?
Yeah, thank you, Pak Faisal, for your question. I believe that it will not affect our defense relations with ASEAN countries. First, because Indonesia applies defensive approach. So the purpose to have the aircraft carrier is not to, how could I say, it's not to uh, operational military operations, but rather than to military operation other than war. As many analysts say that Indonesia will utilize the aircraft for humanitarian uh, and disaster relief, but not for military operation purposes. And as we know, in ASEAN, Thailand also has aircraft carrier, and so if this cooperation happens, Indonesia will be the second ASEAN country to have the aircraft carrier. So I think it doesn't matter for ASEAN member states saying that Indonesia has this aircraft carrier.
Okay, thank you very much, Bu Marina. Let's see. The next question is from Pak Daindra Wardana from the National Center for Public Administration at Nanyang Technological University. His question is as follows: with the not so good domestic economy and its prospect at present time, to what extent do you think the domestic economy situation can affect Indonesian foreign policy?
Yeah,
Oke, Mbak,
thank
silakan.
you. Yeah, thank you, Pak Darendra. Yeah, I think it affects our foreign policy as well because due to budget cuts, for example, and now President Prabowo also prioritize the MBG program, free free meals in schools. And if we look at the budget, the national budget, the the first place is to put for the Indonesian national nutrition body. So that's why during his visit to other countries or to other partners, he also promotes our meals program so that other countries can invest on that. Yeah, more or less like that.
Okay, thank you very much, Mbak Marina. Okay, let's see. Okay, next question is from my Indonesia program colleagues, Prof. Leonard Sebastian. Prof. Leonard question is the following. Thank you for your presentation. May I know your view of President Prabowo's recent comments on the war in Iran?
Yeah, I think I mentioned in my presentation that he proposed to be a mediator of the U.S. Israel-Iran conflict. But then I think it's like a premature statement because after that, the Iranian ambassador to Indonesia stated that the Iran want to negotiate with U.S. and Israel. And sometimes we can see that Prabowo's impulsive statement in the public, and it also creates criticism domestically. As I mentioned before, we lack of kind of bargaining power. First, because Indonesia joins Board of Peace, which inside there are US and Iran, which makes Indonesia can be seen as not neutral mediator. And the second one, Indonesia has also interest in terms of tariff reduction with the US. It also will reduce our bargaining position as a mediator. That's why I would suggest that before he made public statement, it should be based on comprehensive assessment inside rather than kind of impulsive public statement. I hope it answers your questions.
Okay, thank you, Bu Marina. Yeah, if I may elaborate a little bit with regard to Indonesia's decision to join the board of peace. Could you explain to us what you think is the logic of Pak Prabowo to basically take Indonesia into this bit of an uncharted territory? Because, for instance, like in the past, Indonesia, whenever there is like conflict resolution or peacekeeping situation, Indonesia only follows the United Nations. That basically, we send international peacekeepers under the UN black flag. But and the way I understand how this board of peace are going to work, they're going to have their own so-called peace force, but
Mhm.
this peace force is going to be commanded under an American commander,
Yes.
and this is something that's a bit of an uncharted territory for Indonesia because if you recall, during the last U.S. Iraq war, the U.S. Did ask Indonesia to join, the so-called coalition of the willing after after the U.S. has defeated Saddam Hussein, but we refused on the ground that Indonesia only participate in peacekeeping missions under a neutral institution, which is the UN. How come under our current president, in your view, we decided to to join the board of peace, which created these complications with regard
Mhm.
to Indonesia's free and active foreign policy based on our past precedent with regard to international peacekeeping.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Pak. I think it's more about Prabowo's ambition to put Indonesia clearly visible on the global stage. That's the first one. Uh, and then the second one regarding the deployment of military personnel to join the ISF. If we look at the previous administration under SBY, he also very famous to utilize uh, Indonesia. He has an ambition to deploy 4,000 Indonesian peacekeepers under the UN peacekeeping operation, and that's made Indonesia's positive reputation in the world affairs. But in this decision, I think we also need to consider the differences between deploying our military personnel under the UN command and under the ISF or Board of His command. It's different thing because if you join the UN peacekeeping operations as peacekeepers, you will be put in the locations which are not a conflict area. I mean, you will help for peace after negative peace has been concluded. But in this case, under ISF, you will be put in the conflicted arena. That's why we also need to think the safety of our military personnel. So that's why I suggest that Indonesia should continuously evaluate our decision of joining the Board of Peace. Is it effective or not? Is it safe or not?
Okay, thank you very much for your answer, Bu Marina. So, okay, next question is coming from Kanisa from the Indonesian Research and Innovation Agency, BRIN. At this stage, what can we hope for Indonesia's focus on ASEAN? Will Indonesia pay more attention to its regional roots? And if so, what will it take for Indonesia to refocus on ASEAN again?
Yeah, I really hope that Indonesia will come back to its international strategic environment, which is ASEAN. And I hope that Indonesia, like before, will always initiate some ideas or approaches to ASEAN to address the regional dynamics. For example, like I mentioned before, in 2011, under Minister of Foreign Affairs Martina Telgawa, Indonesia initiated shuttle diplomacy to help Thai-Cambodia border dispute. So I mean that those kind of initiative, although we are not the chair for this year, but as we have modality as one of ASEAN's founding fathers and also a de facto leader in ASEAN, I would propose that Indonesia should be more active in ASEAN. And another question, what will it take? But if we see the annual press statement by MOFA in under current administration, Minister Sugiono put ASEAN in the statement, but I think it has to be more just statement. We have to be more kind of active action rather than just statement. So yeah, maybe just kind of initiatives or ideas that can also support the current chairman to address regional dynamics.
Okay, I guess we also have another question related to Indonesia's participation in ASEAN. This time is from Bapak Lukas Tambunan. His question is as follows. In 2027, the Secretary General of ASEAN will come from Indonesia. How do you see if this would change the attention of Prabowo? Would this change the attention of President Prabowo to focus more attention toward the ASEAN region?
Okay, thank you, Pak Lucas. I actually don't know about this news. May I know who will be the Secretary General of ASEAN from Indonesia? Do you know, Pa Alex, who will be?
I'm not sure. I'm not
Uh-huh.
sure if there is. I mean, there are rumors that
Uh-huh.
former Foreign Affairs Minister Ibu Retno
Ah,
might be one of the nominees, but there is no official confirmation yet.
okay. If they, if that's the case, I guess yes, it will make Indonesia more active in ASEAN. But yeah, I apologize because I can't explore it more because I don't know this news before. So yeah, but if someone from Indonesia will be the Secretary General, I guess Indonesia will take the lead to initiate something new for ASEAN.
Okay, thank you, Bu Marina. Okay, the next question is from Ibu Chut Jihan Shafira. I have two questions. Basically, firstly, how do you assess Prabowo's foreign policy and other general policy, and how it affect foreign investors' confidence in Indonesia? The second question is, with the current U.S. Supreme Court ruling of Trump tariff, what are the recommended approach for Indonesia for the newly signed ART agreement with the U.S.? As the ART is the more beneficial to the U.S., do you suggest that we back down and leverage the ruling of the U.S. Supreme Court, or should we continue pursuing the ART agreement as what Minister Erlangga Hartarto, Indonesia's lead negotiator with the US, have been saying?
Mhm.
Okay, Ibu
Uh,
silakan.
yeah, thank you, Ibu Chut. For your first question, I think from from Prabowo's globe-trotting diplomacy, he made some deals and investment for Indonesia. So I don't think it's it has a um, bad impression for investor to Indonesia. Rather, it will bring more investment to Indonesia, especially he because he always promotes our um, um, in terms of MBG and also energy, food security, and so on. So many deals has been made under Prabowo's administration during his state visits. And then the second one regarding the Trump's tariff, what the recommended approach? Okay, because it's not final yet, so I believe that Indonesia can still negotiate with the US about the tariff because as I mentioned, the Prabowo, President Trump will reinstate the tariff of 10 to 15%. So Indonesia now has 19% of tariff. So that's why these circumstances will uh, give advantage to Indonesia because we still can negotiate with the US to reduce our tariff than before. Uh, what else? As the IRT is more beneficial to the US. Um, yeah, some analysts say that uh, it's unfair deal. But as I'm not an expert in international political economy, I can't explore the reason why. But for me personally, we still have to negotiate more with the US until uh, the final decision from the US government side.
Okay. Uh, Thank you very much, Bu Marina. And then I guess there is this basically. And the next question is from Ibu Reno Prihandoko from Lab 45. Basically, her question is as follows. How closely aligned are Indonesia's foreign policy and defense procurement decisions under President Prabowo, considering cases like Italy suddenly becomes a major arms supplier despite not being a country he has officially visited? Basically, this refers to Indonesia's decision to purchase the Giuseppe Garibaldi arms carrier, among other recent purchases from Italy. What do you think about this, Bu Marina?
Yeah, I think the foreign policy and defense procurement decision is still aligned under Prabowo. As I mentioned, he always prioritized defense or military equipment modernization when he was the Minister of Defense back then. And he brings his priority until now as a president. And the thing is, Indonesia for him needs to diversify our defense partners. That's why we collaborate with other nations and other countries. Previously, we cooperate with South Korea for purchasing ships and also fighter jets. Now we expand our collaboration with Japan, with Turkey, we also have with Rafale with France. I think it's not about the the country necessarily, but more about diversification of our partner.
Oke, terima kasih. So let's see. Okay, there is this question from Bapak Jeffrey Allen. From a development standpoint, and given Indonesia's traditional position taking part in UN operations, what role might Indonesia play in the future reconstruction of post-war Iran? For instance, either assisting UNDP or other multilateral development aid programs. Do you see a potential role for Indonesia in the future reconstruction of post-war Iran?
Yeah, of course. As we, Indonesia is the, I think, top 5 or top 10 country in deploying UN peacekeepers. So through that modality, we can also help the reconstruction of Iran war. I mean the post-war. But again, it depends on the agreement or approval from Iran itself. If Iran agrees to have Indonesian peacekeepers, then we can deploy our military troops there. And in terms of what's aid assistance? Yeah, I think we can leverage or utilize our bilateral cooperation with Iran through our aid programs, but we can also utilize our involvement in the international organization like UNDP or UNCHR to distribute the aid to Iranian people there.
Okay. So just a quick follow-up. Based from your awareness of previous post-reconstruction mission, for instance, in Iraq or in Afghanistan after the war, what kind of role did Indonesia play in those conflicts that we potentially can reutilize in a future post-conflict Iran?
Oh yeah, I just answered that question, Pak. But I
Uh,
think you missed the previous one, the question from Bu Ganewati.
okay. Yeah. I was saving this because
Oh, okay.
okay, we still have about 15 minutes before the end of our webinar. If there are any last minute questions from the audience, this is about time for you to ask them to Ibu Marina now. And like I said earlier, yeah, we would appreciate it if you could state your name and institutional affiliation. So without further ado, let me answer as Ibu Kanawati's question. Uh, there are some critics of Prabowo's foreign policy that basically argue that the current foreign policy has strayed from the principle of independence and active or bebas active participation. What are your views, Mbak Marina?
Um, this is a tough question, but let me put it this way. Instead of I think he just Prabowo. I mean, Prabowo just has his own style. When I mentioned about omnidirectional approach, uh, but the roots of Indonesia's foreign policy is still uh, independence, free and active foreign policy. Uh, but some decision or needs to be evaluated because, as I mentioned, it some of the statement or decision he made, it creates critics pro and contrast domestically, and sometimes it makes confusion internationally. That's why in the one year his administration, I I see that there is still lack of foreign policy direction. Uh, because the consolidation phase at the beginning of the his administration, and he still have 4 years left, and I hope he can adjust or more coordination and synergy with Indonesian Ministry of Foreign Affairs to shape the direction clearly.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bu Marina. Just one last follow-up question from me
Mhm.
with regard to Indonesia's future role in ASEAN. If let's imagine, unfortunately, if there is like a new conflict somewhere in this region, hypothetically South China Sea, or a new insurgencies in Myanmar that attracted international that requires international intermediation. Do you think Indonesia would play a role in that if this conflict happens between now and the end of Prabowo presidency in 2029?
Mhm.
What do you think, Bu Marina?
I think if something happened, for example, like South China Sea conflict, Indonesia will do more because we have national interest in the North Natuna Sea, and as I mentioned, that one of the priorities of Prabowo's foreign policy is defense and security sector, especially in terms of sovereignty and territorial integrity. He will not he will not so he will against parties that violate this our national interests. So I believe that if something happened in North in South in the South China Sea, Indonesia will take more actions. What else? Yeah, I think so because we have specific interests in the North Natuna Sea. Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's all.
Uh, how about Myanmar? If the situation in Myanmar is getting worse and people, international community call for international intervention in Myanmar, would Indonesia be playing a more active role in your view? But
In terms of Myanmar, um, I don't know, but as I mentioned, Indonesia uh, was absent during the informal meeting in Thailand, but actually we also have impact for what happens in Myanmar because many refugees come to Aceh or in Indonesia as well. So it should be a concern for Indonesia, but yeah, I don't know.
it's okay, but I mean, I think this is already quite informative enough. So okay, we have no further questions from the audience. So I believe we can end this webinar 10 minutes earlier than scheduled. I would like to thank Ibu Marina for her very interesting and detailed presentation on Indonesian foreign policy under Prabowo Subianto. And I also would like to thank all of the audience members for participating in this webinar. This is also the Indonesia program's final event for this financial year. So we look forward for your participation in the new financial year starting on April 1st with as we bring in more seminar and webinar speakers for on behalf of RSIS Indonesia program. With that, I would conclude this webinar. Terima kasih banyak, Ibu Marina, and we hope to see you. We hope to see all of you again in a future Indonesia program event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak.